from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk where facts matter. Welcome to The Gailey Show, the only daily LGBTQ radio news and talk show in the United States. I'm your host, John Parker. It's Friday, so let's talk about some culture and entertainment. Take a breath from the news. So what is on today's episode? In the second half hour, Jim and I are going to have reviews of two films, Spark and Perfect Endings. But up first, a new anthology of crime fiction comes out on September 2nd. The title is Crime Inc. Iconic. It's an anthology of crime fiction inspired by famous queer icons. So drawing inspiration from queer icons, James Baldwin, Oscar Wilde, Candy Darling. These tales span the rich spectrum of crime fiction, from cozy mysteries and whodunits to noir, psychological thrillers, and police procedurals. Featuring 25 authors, the anthology was edited by John Copenhaver and Salem West. John Copenhaver is an award-winning author whose latest novel, Hall of Mirrors, was named a New York Times Crime Novel of the Year and won the Left Coast Crime Award for Best Historical Mystery. His earlier books include Dodging and Burning and The Savage Kind, which won the Lambda Literary Award for Best LGBTQ Mystery. He co-edited Crime Inc. Iconic and serves on the board of the International Thriller Writers, a founding member of Queer Crime Writers. He teaches at VCU and mentors in the University of Nebraska's Omaha MFA program. Anne Laughlin was born and raised in Chicago, a city that often serves as a setting for her novels. She has written 7 books for Bold Stroke Books, all standalone crime novels of the classic mystery, police procedural, and psychological thrill variety. She is the winner of 4 Goldie Awards from the Golden Crown Literary Society and has been shortlisted 3 times for a Lambda Literary Award from the Lambda Literary Foundation. She is also a contributor to Crime Inc. Iconic. They both join me now. John and Anne, welcome back to The Gailey Show.
It's wonderful to be here, John.
Likewise.
I have to say, I really like saying the title of your book, Crime Inc. Iconic.
Right.
All right. So that in itself sounds very queer, but let's start with a criminal statistic. In 2023, crime fiction anthologies featured 517 stories across 30 titles. So 30 titles of crime fiction anthologies, 517 stories, but less than 1% were written by LGBTQ plus writers. What? John, help us out in understanding what the fork is going on there.
So in 2023, or rather there soon after, Jeff Marks, who is a colleague of mine and fellow co-founder of Queer Crime Writers, did a study where he looked at all the anthologies which have been officially approved by the Mystery Writers of America, and then of course looked at their contents and the backgrounds of their writers, and made this sort of shocking discovery, if it's not shocking, certainly unsettling, that there is just not much representation in short fiction, crime short fiction, in our community. And Queer Crime Writers published this statistic broadly to sort of raise awareness. The goal initially was to raise awareness through the mainstream anthology and short story writing community to, I guess, urge them to do something about this. And at this point, Salem West, who is the publisher and my co-editor for Crime Inc., reached out to me and said, "Hey, John, what do you think about editing a collection of queer crime fiction as a means of sort of answering, the call of that statistic, and as a means of highlighting, of course, all these terrific authors that are in this book." The hope being, of course, that we're celebrating, distinctly queer crime writers with this anthology, but that this will be urging the wider crime reading and writing community to read, and also include some of these authors and many others, by the way. We could have done 2 of these, frankly, and find places for them in these mainstream anthologies, so that we're included along with all the other writers that are doing great work in the mystery crime writing world.
You're both award-winning writers of multiple stories and novels. So before we dive into the anthology, I'd like to hear from both of you your hypothesis or hypotheses of why there hasn't been this representation. I mean, is it structural? Is it intentional? Is it just, it sort of happened? Like, John, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons why this happens. First of all, I think it's important to say I do think there's a lot of well-meaning anthology editors out there. By and large, they are. They don't mean to be exclusive, and I think some of it comes. I think several things are at play here. One is that a lot of these anthologies are created by the same editors, often reaching out to the same groups of trusted short story writers. And that's not to say they aren't excellent short story writers, but it's a similar group of people. So you kind of get stuck in these circles. It's also easier to edit those anthologies because the work, that they'll produce quality work. They're all known quantities, but it has this unfortunate consequence of closing out new voices of any sort, really, honestly. Yeah. The other thing that I think sometimes is happening, I think this one's much more complex, is that you do have a well-meaning editor who reaches out to queer writers to solicit work, and then they don't submit. And this is something you've heard, I hear it a lot. It's like, well, we tried, but we didn't succeed. And they just didn't want us, is essentially. I think what's going on is that it's not just that you're reaching out, but you have to actually demonstrate that you're a safe space for these writers. I think there's a lot of fear from queer crimers about being edited by a straight male, often older guy, and what impact that might have on their work. So there's fear that you have to overcome. It's not just reaching out, but you have to sort of demonstrate how you're an ally beyond just what sometimes can be read as the performative need to diversify a list in an anthology. In other words, you guys sort of make a demonstration of, it's not just that we want to diversify so no one dings us, it's because we're really interested in your work and what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe there's some editors out there that just simply aren't interested, do not want to have that conversation, and roll their eyes that, essentially sort of this implicit, we're just writing in fear of work because we're queer writers. And I think that's insidious and horrible. I think that's definitely the exception. It's mostly well-meaning folks not quite getting it right.
Anne, how about for you?
Well, it's hard to expand on John's answer, but I do think there's the unconscious bias that remains with so many people, and I think the point about fishing in the same pond is a powerful one. We kind of see it in the queer writing world as well, in anthologies and other work, but I think the point about not submitting because of the fear is really a valid one, because there's so many years of submission and not getting accepted, and you keep knocking your head against the door, and how many times are you going to keep trying to enter? I think that's a valid point as well. So I think there's a number, as John pointed out, just a number of elements at play here that kept the representation from really reaching its zenith, which I hope with this anthology we're stepping toward.
Well, all right, let's pivot then to the anthology without further ado. We've set the stage, we've set the table for Crime Inc. Iconic. And I'm curious then, maybe we could start with you. How did you interpret the theme then of iconic? How did you go about writing your particular story? Like, give us a little bit about it.
Well, my iconic character came instantly to mind because I've had a bit of an obsession with Vita Sackville West for a long, long time. And Vita Sackville West was an aristocratic woman in the early part of the 20th century who was a raconteur who had a string of love affairs. She left a lot of broken hearts behind her, including that of Virginia Woolf. And she was an iconoclast. She was really an amazing character. And it turned out the real passion in her life was gardening. So she had many sides to her character. But one of the things that, and just to state how long I've been interested in her, my mother in 1980 gave me a biography of Vita Sackville West. So for 45 years, this has been going on. And so I immediately chose her. And one of the aspects of Vita in her heyday was that she liked to dress as a man and go off on weekends with whoever her current lover was. And she would stay in male character for the weekend and enjoy cross-dressing and acting as a man, as a married couple, wherever they would go. Small towns in England were a good example. So it came to mind, what if, I don't know how this made this leap, but I thought of, what if there was a group of high society women, if not virtually aristocratic, but high society women who not only liked, but felt most themselves when they dressed as men. And they were shut out of society completely. So they formed a gentleman's club. And this is in the heyday of gentlemen's clubs in London. They formed their own gentlemen's club where they could dress as men and be with others, like-minded other women. Did you ask?
I have to take a quick break here.
Yeah.
We're going to have more with John and Ann when we come back. You are listening to The Gailey Show on AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. More after the break. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm John Parker. We are coming up on the bottom of the hour. A new anthology of crime writing is headed your way on September 2nd. It's titled Crime Inc. Iconic. It's described as essential reading for fans of crime fiction and anyone who craves representation in the stories they love, specifically LGBTQ representation. Its co-editor and one of its contributors are here with us today, John Copenhaver and Ann Laughlin. And before the break, you were talking about your story within the anthology, which is a bunch of, a group of high society women who decide they're going to create their own gentlemen's club. Take it from there.
Yes, where they dress and act as men in the freedom of their own club with other women who are like themselves. So that's the basic premise of the story. And then the crime part of it comes with people are being murdered, club members are being murdered. And at the beginning of the story, there's already been one death, and then a second occurs toward the beginning of the story, and then there's a third attack toward the end of the story. So it's a serial murder story, which is hard to do in 7,000 words. I've done serial murder novels, and you needed every one of the 90,000 words to do it. So that was a challenge, but that is the hopefulness. Creating this club was a hopeful act of these women, and then somebody hating them enough to try to kill them was the despairing part of the story. So it had a little bit of both.
Well, I can't wait rather to read that one. Can you tell us the end of the week? All my words are running together. John, tell me about the theme. How did you come up with this idea of having characters that were iconic, and then tell us about your own icon in your story?
Yeah, sure. In fact, we brainstorm how to create a unified collection of queer crime fiction. As you mentioned in your introduction, there are just many different subgenres represented here, from cozy to thriller to noir. So, what's going to be the sort of unifying thing? And we thought that one thing that always unified the queer experience was that we looked to our icons to help understand ourselves in the world. And those icons aren't necessarily queer themselves, but they represent something to us. And so we thought, well, why don't we ask our writers to incorporate some way? It was really up to the writer to incorporate a queer icon into their text. Sometimes it's a reference. It's a musician's song, perhaps. Sometimes the actual icon steps on stage in the story, So there's all different sorts of icons filtered through here. Sometimes the icon's influence can be felt more than actually is explicitly stated. So there are lots of different ways that these writers interpreted their icon. And in the back of the collection, every writer did a few sentences on why they chose the icon they chose. So if you're curious, after reading the collection, you can find out a little more about it. I chose Truman Capote, one of my favorite writers. And In Cold Blood is certainly in my top 10 favorite books. I taught it for many years, and I feel a great affinity for it. My story is really about young men, though, at their first year in college, pledging, and they're being asked by the older brother in their fraternity to kill an animal, a goose, with a golf club as their final pledging task. And this is something that was actually based on a true thing. And I felt it was so disturbing that I needed to write a story about it. And a lot of what the story is about, though, is the ways that we're compelled, particularly men are compelled to do violence because of the pressure of other male influences. Sometimes the person pulling the trigger isn't the source, the origin point of the violence, is what I was trying to get at. And so my story, without saying too much, explores the way that violence can be ignited by very charismatic, in this case, very charismatic fraternity brother, who is pretty despicable, if you ask me.
I agree.
Well, I mean, two icons there, Truman Capote and Vita Sackville West. I mean, come on. That's amazing. I'm very much looking forward to getting my own copy. For listeners, we are including links in the show notes and on our website for you to purchase your own copies. We're talking with John Copenhaver and Anne Laughlin. John is the co-editor of the forthcoming anthology Crime Inc. Iconic, which drops September 2nd, and Laughlin is one of its contributors. This probably is a premature question, but did it go so well, the process, that a second anthology in the series is on the books?
That is certainly by design the hope. I have a list of writers who I'm really dying to include. Like I mentioned earlier, there's so many wonderful queer writers out there. There certainly could be. Nothing is absolutely been established yet, but a lot of it depends on people buying this copy and supporting this collection. So go buy your copy so we can do this again. But yeah, we would love to do another Crime Inc. and it would be a different theme, of course. It probably won't be iconic. It would be some other theme that's related to the queer experience, but certainly crime stories and featuring a lot of these fantastic authors. We'd love to keep it going as a series.
Absolutely. Well, I do want to fit in a quick, because I'm just under 2 minutes here. Anne, what is next for you after Crime Inc. Iconic?
I've just started a new novel and set in Chicago, and featuring a woman whose mother is a pawn shop owner and fence. And so she's the daughter of a criminal and she's a private investigator.
Excellent. And John, how about for you?
Yeah.
Real brief.
Yeah, I am writing in the midst of writing the third book in the trilogy that started The Savage Kind, and the Hall of Mirrors. This is the Hall of Mirrors is the second book, and this is the third, called Goddess of Love, and it takes these characters into the early 1960s. And there's an inheritance. One of them becomes very wealthy, but with a great inheritance, you have great responsibility and perhaps something that much more nefarious at play. So I want to round out that trilogy. So I'm working when I'm not promoting. I'm working.
Well, speaking of promoting, so for our Chicago listeners, there is a release party for Crime Inc. Iconic. It's on September 11th at 7 p.m. Free to attend, but registration is required. It's at Women and Children First. You can head out to their website to register. It's at 5233 North Clark Street. Wow, I just can't talk today. The book is Crime Inc. Iconic. We've included links in the show notes and on our websites, am950radio.com and heartlandsignal.com, for you to pre-order and buy your own copy. You can connect with John at johncopenhaver.com. Anne is at annelaughlinwriter.com. John and Anne, thank you for joining us today. Friends of the show, please come back soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. We had a wonderful time. Thank you.
All right. Well, we got some film reviews coming up for you. Stay tuned to The Gailey Show. Coming to you from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPTA 20, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I am John Parker. It is 33 minutes after the hour. In the studio with me now is my executive producer, Jim Pounds.
Hey, all.
We are going to give you a couple of film reviews today.
Yes.
So the first one we're going to talk about is Spark.
Oh.
Now, Spark is, here's the official description. Aaron gets stuck in a time loop after meeting Trevor. Seeking love, he tries to break free by unraveling Trevor's potential involvement while reliving the same day over and over and over again. It's written and directed by Nicholas Gurevich. Stars Theo Germain, best known for the Ryan Murphy series The Politician, as well as the film They, Them. Vico Ortiz, also starring Vico Ortiz, who had a star-making turn in the tragically canceled Our Flag Means Death. Never forgive HBO for canceling that series. And Danelle Leyva, a three-time Olympic medalist in gymnastics who moved to LA and starred in America Ninja Warrior, is our third star of Spark. As always, is there animal violence? No. Is there anti-LGBTQ violence? No. Is there an HIV storyline? There is not. Is there a happy ending? There's a WTF ending. And folks will just have to interpret that as whether or not it's a happy ending or not. It is currently available on Prime, maybe available on other of your streaming platforms. We watched it on Prime, so you'll have to check it out. That's where we were only able to find it, but it could be on others. So make sure that you search your local streaming devices. Jim, your thoughts on Spark?
I believe this is Nicholas's first film.
Okay.
I think I read that. And I, in my experience, this idea of a loop was very unusual. I don't remember seeing it very often. And now every other story, every other film is using that. And it is an interesting device to explore something in a different way and saying, well, what if I did this? What if I thought that? What if I got ahead of this? What if I stood to the right? And there's something kind of compelling about it as an audience member. I don't know that it always makes for a better storytelling device, but it is now very much in favor, it feels like. So instead of being thrown by it like I used to be, I now feel like, oh yeah, I know where get the general boundaries that we're living in. And I think it's interesting because there's something about he's using it to try to do some investigating, right? He's trying to figure out if the reason he's in this loop is because of this other guy, which for the longest time didn't seem obvious. And it sounds confusing, but if you just stick with it and know that on one of these loops, you're going to start catching your footing and understanding
let's
the
explain
story.
for folks what is a loop. So Aaron wakes up in the morning. This is the beginning of the loop.
Right.
And their roommate, played by Vico Ortiz, is there and offers a bottle of wine, which is disgusting. And that, like, every day it starts with that, where Vico Ortiz offers Aaron a glass of wine and is like, no, don't drink that. And then it goes into a birthday party. They're going to a birthday party, which is a scavenger hunt. And so the person whose birthday it is putting people together randomly to go out and find clues that then let you know where the party is. And that's how Aaron meets Trevor, because Aaron is in a parking lot by a park and is waiting for somebody to show up. And then Trevor shows up and is like, well, I guess you're my ride. And then they have to go to the next place, which is a house. And the house has clues in it as well. And then that leads them to the party. But before they get to the party, there's sort of this loop again. And Aaron is clearly attracted to Trevor. But before they can find out whether or not it's reciprocal, even though they do some making out in the house before where the final clues are, it kind of restarts the day constantly. Yeah. That's the loop.
Yeah, and whatever the loop is in detail, it you're oriented towards whoever your hero is. So the person that you keep seeing in this loop, you're feeling for him or for them and whatever they're going through, and you're trying to figure it out to help them too. At least I felt very invested in why is this happening, and he got to be very sort of he had more self-awareness. He didn't seem victimized. He seemed like he was being very calculating about, if I change this and I don't say yes to that and I stand over here and I refuse to. And it was interesting to watch how that slight change eventually started to throw the loop off.
Yeah.
And you started feeling like, oh, we're getting some control over this situation now, which is always a nice feeling when you seem like you're in a science fiction loop that you don't have any control over. So it was interesting and pretty brave for a first-time film director to deal with that kind of a script, because that is hard to maintain and keep interesting and keep moving so that you don't feel stuck yourself in the story. So
you don't feel like you're stuck in a loop.
Yeah, and I give him a lot of credit for that's more risk than I would have taken on a. I'd take something a lot easier for a first film. So in that regard, I thought he did a really good job making it sustained interest for the period of a film.
Groundhog Day, obviously the seminal time loop film. And then I'm blanking on the title of it, but Andy Samberg and Christine Milioti starred in it. Yes. They were at a wedding.
Yes.
And they got stuck in a loop. And so I love the
Russian Dolls is another one.
The motif of exploring identity and how you change when you have to constantly be in the same setting, talking to the same people, and how does the person evolve? How do they figure it out? Like, how do they, how do they figure out that they're in the loop? How do they figure out that they're going to leave the loop? Is fate involved in that you have to learn a lesson before you can get out of it?
Right.
Is it a true love thing where you have to find your true love? And then once you acknowledge that, then you get out of the loop.
Right.
So I think that's a very, I like the idea of it. That's why we see more and more of these films happening. Mm-hmm. I think it is beautifully shot. I do think that writer-director Nicholas Gurevich makes some very interesting choices here, contributing to the time loop genre, if you will, of film. So in that regard, I think it's definitely, if you like that particular style of storytelling, I think this is going to be definitely up your alley. I think that having a non-binary hero is also interesting. And I say that not just because of the representation. I think how individual people, based off of the community they live in and how they have to navigate that community, what they then bring to figuring out the time loop and the perspective of how to get through the time loop. And do you even want to leave the time loop? Like if I ever found myself in a time loop, I would just enjoy that. I would chill out for 1,000 days because I would love that level of control. But I think that's why I also, and Theo Germain really shows off their talent here as an actor. Yes. You know, they were fantastic in The Politician. You could clearly tell there's a lot of talent there. So it was very nice to have a vehicle for them to really shine. And I hope that this leads to more work for them. I absolutely love Vico Ortiz. They were my favorite character, I think. Yeah, they were my favorite character on Our Flag Means Death.
Okay.
Such an interesting storyline. Their character was pretending to be this super vicious male pirate, and then you come to find out that they're not this, cisgender violent pirate, even though the character is clearly an assassin and knows what they are doing and can be ruthless at times, but also very sweet. And so I loved that character. So I was also just so pleased when we sat down to watch it. I'm like, oh my God, it's Vico Ortiz. So again, I want to see both of them in more films as much as possible. I think this was a really great way of another good showcase for Vico. Like, please get them a series. Like, I think HBO, like, Vico's owned a series from HBO because they canceled Our Flag Means Death. Oh, wow. So that could be payment. That could be retribution.
That's one way of looking at it.
To Vico. Yeah. So to that end, very well made, very interesting choices from a writer perspective in terms of how to navigate the time loop, how to get out of the time loop. The ending was a choice. I did not like the choice. This is, folks who've been listening now for a while and listening to us do these film reviews know that once I don't like a writing choice on the ending, and I am very hard on people when it comes to endings, because they're really critical. And I think that's because I have such a hard time as a writer ending things. And so I'm constantly watching folks and how they're choosing to do that. And maybe I'm overly critical. I did not like the choice at the end. I think other folks may be like, oh, that was totally the right choice to make. And this is a happy ending. And so I'm going to run with that. I didn't necessarily feel that way. So I'm still going to give it 3.5 stars.
I think I'm going to give it 4 stars. And I'm interested that the ending didn't ruin it for me, or didn't. Oftentimes it does, really put a bow on it or put a stinking pile of poo on it. But that's not, in this case, for some reason, the ending left me sort of, I don't know, unaffected, or I don't know. I wasn't invested in it. Maybe that was the problem, but I accepted it. And I would give it 4 stars because I think for a first time effort, that was pretty good.
I think there are 2 people that Theo Germain's character, Aaron, are, there are 2 people that Theo is attracted to.
Right.
And there's a choice made at the end about which attraction to pursue, which seemed weird to me. So that's where some people would be like, oh my gosh, it's such an amazing happy ending. Right. And then I just didn't like the choice. So that's what's getting me down to a 3.5. Yeah. That being said, it's a solid 3.5 rainbow stars. Yeah. So definitely check it out. As we said earlier, we found it on Prime. It could be available on different streamers, so check out your favorite streamers to see if it is available there. The film is Spark. All right, the next film, Perfect Endings. This is a Brazilian film. It is directed by Daniel Ribeiro. It is written by Ribeiro and Rafael Gomez. It stars Artur Volpi, Michelle Yoseas, I apologize for these Portuguese names, Juliana Gerais, Marcus Oli, and Rafael Americo. So what is this particular film about? João and Hugo end their 10-year relationship, but decide to stay best friends. And João thinks this is absolutely delightful and that it was the perfect way to end their relationship. And the metaphor that he uses is, it's like a TV series. We went out on top and we didn't have any more seasons that would have been terrible to watch, and then everybody doesn't like the show. As each of them start dating again, uncontrollable emotions arise, contrasting the planned perfection of their breakup. As always, we like to let folks know off the top, was there animal violence? No. Was there an anti-LGBTQ violence storyline? There was not. HIV storyline? No. Happy ending? Yes, but interesting how they got there. Also available, we found it on Prime. Again, check your local streamers to see if it is available there. Jim, your thoughts?
First of all, the premise, I don't know, maybe I'm too much of a romantic or something, but the idea that, let's stop while we're on top, that just seems so artificial to me. And I, being a clearly codependent person, I would never do something like that because, you stick with it no matter what. But I feel like, so all right away, the premise took me out of it. Like, we're going to just stop because this has been fun and now we're done after 10 years. I couldn't fathom any of that, but that's how these characters felt. So you kind of have to accept it, but I didn't like any of that thinking. So I started out with my arms crossed across my chest, and I'm going to stop there.
I do have to fit in a break. So we're going to have more of our review of Perfect Endings, a Brazilian film that came out last year. One last break to get to, but still lots to talk about here on The Gailey Show. You can keep the conversation going. Follow us on Blue Sky. We're at thegaileyshow.org. You can also sign up for AM950's newsletter if you're in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Go to am950radio.com to sign up. More after the break on The Gailey Show. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. We are coming up on the top of the hour. On Fridays, Jim and I like to provide film reviews for you to see what you can watch over the weekend, in addition to reading new books. And please be sure to pre-order the book that we talked about earlier today, Crime Inc. Iconic. We're including links in the show notes and on our website. The film we're talking about right now is Perfect Endings. Jim, do you want to continue where you left off?
Well, so I was resisting the sort of setup, but realizing they're just trying to get into some other examination, really, instead of justifying that. And I was reading a review that was talking about how this is an examination of relationships and, how to understand them. And so they use this metaphor, which I also didn't love, of here's a Rubik's Cube, and I'm trying to figure out how to solve the Rubik's Cube, and that's the metaphor for I'm trying to figure out relationships. I thought, oh God, that seems so obvious. But the people were, attractive and characters were interesting. And I just felt like a lot of the structure of it was sort of obvious and a little shallow, but the performances were believable and you cared about them and you wanted, them to figure it out. I felt invested in the characters, but not because of the writing. At least that's what I thought. That was a weak spot personally.
The Rubik's Cube did feel cliche, not trope to me as well. Something I think it'd be interesting to tell folks is that Xiao is also an editor and filmmaker and is trying to pursue getting a film made, but it's put on hold when the production company that he is working with is bought out by another one, and they put a hold on a whole bunch of non-commercial projects.
Right.
What he ends up doing is while he's meeting new people through, I'm assuming the app is Grindr, goes and meets this couple, doesn't want to have a three-way with them, but ends up, they will say, why don't you record it then? And he does such a great job of filming them because he's a filmmaker that they're like, can you come back and do that again, but make something more like professional? So he does that. And the couple love it so much, they tell somebody, friends of theirs. And so they ask him to come over and they're giving him cash, Xiao, to do this. And so it starts this sort of side hustle where he is going around with these couples and making these
naughty videos.
naughty videos
Yeah.
for them. And so that to me was way more interesting than the Rubik's Cube, because he is able to observe these relationships. He's able
Yes.
to observe these various ways that people are being intimate with each other.
Yes.
He has a pair of friends who are absolutely hilarious. They give the funniest lines of the entire movie, which is, I mean, and it's just on point. And so I really appreciated those performances. I really appreciated the writing of both of those characters. I think it's interesting also as he is trying to find himself, to your point, Jim, and he's thinking, well, I did have the perfect breakup, so here we go. And it then becomes kind of clear that was it the perfect breakup that he thought that it was. And he's trying to sort of date these other people, but it feels like he's fumbling the ball on them, because has he figured out the right lessons from the breakup of the relationship? Hasn't he? They do leave it ambiguous as the viewer, where you can sit there and go, well, yeah, he did make the right choice. But then sometimes like, well, maybe he didn't make the right choice based off of how he's interacting with this particular person. And I also thought it was very clever structurally in the filmmaking that instead of making us rely on watching a person text on a phone and then, are they zooming in close enough on the phone for us to see the messages? And there are better people who are more accessible where they put the text box, icons, the thought
Full
bubbles
size.
on the screen.
Yeah.
This one, they just got rid of that altogether.
Yeah.
And they had the people talking to the camera as if they were talking to him,
Right.
so that you at least have, they're talking to you and, as the audience member, but you're clear that they're talking to each other.
Right.
But it is that feeling that you have when you're texting with someone online, is that you are sort of, you're talking to them, but you're sort of talking at them.
Right.
Which I appreciated also structurally, the insight that the filmmakers had about how we talk online to people. And then there were times where it sort of had this Brady Bunch feeling effect, as well. For the kids, Brady Bunch, go YouTube the Brady Bunch opening and you'll get a sense of what I'm talking about.
Thank you for that reminder, because that is a problem. So many filmmakers and television makers have done a horrendous job of delivering important information that we can't see.
Awful.
Sometimes we've gone back and replayed things and stood
and pause
up
it
next
and
to
then walk
the
up to the
television
TV to see what's on the little
It's like,
tiny screen.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you're right. This film made that easy as pie. And I give them a lot of credit for that.
Yeah.
Better filmmakers have not been able to solve that.
Mm-mm. And I think, for some people, when you see the text on screen in the text bubble, that's how we're used to chatting with people, in whatever app that you're chatting with them on. And so that it gives that experience to it.
Right.
But there was just something really nice to hear the humans, as interpreted by actors, say the words that they're typing, because they're able to bring some interpretation to it that you wouldn't necessarily get. I think it's an incredibly well-made movie. I thought it was perfect for a Saturday night to have a rom-com to watch, to sort of take 2 hours to disconnect from the world.
Yep.
I liked it so much that I didn't even want to watch anything afterwards. I just thought, let's let that breathe into the evening and not race onto something else. So that's how much I liked it. So I am giving it 4 out of 5 rainbow stars.
Yeah, that I have to say, I don't remember you ever doing that, and I think I've agreed that was.
No, this isn't. It's a lovely moment. It's not like Academy Award winning work.
No. But it was satisfying. Yeah, I would give it 3.5 stars.
There we go. All right, folks, you can check out Perfect Endings. We found it on Prime, but check your local streamers to see if they have it as well. And thank you for listening and or watching today on YouTube. You can keep the gay going on all weekend long. On Saturday afternoon is Pride on AM 950 starting at 2 p.m. with the best of from us. Twin Cities Pride Amplified is at 3 p.m. The Illegal Trans Woman is at 4 p.m. Ellie Krug has a new book out, so you definitely want to stay tuned to her program. I just got my copy of it today. And then the Downright Upright Show with Philip Anthony is at 5. 4 of the most comprehensive hours of LGBTQ news on the radio. On Sunday at 11, tune in to WCPTA 20 for Out Chicago. It's Sunday brunch with your gay best friends, Ellen Miller and Scott Duff. Until next week, America, keep it queer.
Keep it queer.